If your monthly income isn't at a point in which you could handle a flooded basement or a damaged roof, I'm of the mindset of like, you may not be ready to invest yet.
One of the things that holds a lot of first-time investors is analysis paralysis, scared to take that leap.
A lot of the people just need guidance and need somebody they trust to tell them how to buy houses. Buying houses is expensive and it's risky if you don't understand it.
This is a perfect example of how learning about real estate investing will help you become a better agent.
It doesn't really matter if it's more money to me. I don't care if it's $10 more. I don't want to have sleepless nights over it. My goal is to have the least vacancy.
All right, welcome to episode 40 of the Agent to Investor podcast, where we talk about the agent side of real estate investing. We'll be talking about the successes, the failures, and all in between. My name is Nico Garcia, a local real estate agent and investor based out of Montgomery County, Maryland. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Anna Bialik, Northern Virginia realtor and mostly out-of-state investor. And I can't believe we're on episode 40.
No, you're here for a great milestone episode. And we have another fantastic guest. We have our good friend, Emily Beatty. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Hi, thanks for having me. Episode 40. I'm excited to be on your 40th episode.
Awesome. Well, again, we are so excited to have you on. You know, Emily is part of another community that we are all a part of. And we were at a retreat a couple of weeks ago. And she was sharing a little bit about, what she's up to. And, she's also an agent and investor and a few other things going on. But do you mind sharing a little bit about your background and where you're from and then what initially introduced you to real estate?
Yeah. Originally, I'm from Kentucky, grew up in Lexington, but I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia, and have lived in a couple different areas throughout my career and post-college life. That started out working here in Atlanta and moved out to the San Francisco Bay Area for about 6 or 7 years as well. But my background in education is in interior design. So I did commercial interior design in mostly corporate office construction and high-rise building construction for the first 8 to 10 years of my career. So that involved a lot of heavy work with general contractors, long-term projects, some short-term projects, and lots of office reworks and a little bit of restaurant design as well. So my background is really heavy in construction management, design, and technical skills, and lots of organization to get big projects done. So this kind of had some good overlap into the real estate world, but I kind of got into this idea of real estate investing back in 2017. I started considering being able to have a little bit more work-life balance in the future. And that led me to reading some books like The 4-Hour Workweek and other books that people go to when they're trying to reduce hours and, capitalize on some sort of entrepreneurial avenue. So somehow I think I don't even know how I stumbled into real estate other than my mom is a real estate agent. She's worked with a little bit of investors in the Lexington, Kentucky area. So I was familiar with what she was doing and understood a little bit about that, and also knew that Kentucky was a pretty good entry point for investing if that was something I ever wanted to do, and that I knew people there. So that is kind of what led me to the decision to move into real estate investing at that time. So that was 2017, like the idea was kind of forming in my mind, and 2018 was around the time when I started taking action and called my mom and said, hey, I'm ready to buy a property. Let's buy one in Lexington, Kentucky. The barrier to entry seems low enough. I have, $75,000, like, let's do it. So that's what kind of where I started in that. So definitely started in the investing side of things and didn't become an agent until later. But yeah, so that's kind of what led me into this realm.
Okay. I have so many questions. So you said your mom was an agent who worked with investors, but was your mom herself an investor when during this course of her agent career? Did she invest in any properties, or was she an agent that just helped investors but never really got in the game?
She never got in the game. She didn't. And she also was working full time, or part time job and like part time agent work. So she wasn't like pounding agent pavement super hard at any point. So she, but I saw what she was doing and said, "Oh wow, that's interesting." And like I knew what it took to like become an agent, get your license, and do it on the side of whatever you were doing. I knew it was like plausible.
Possible.
Yeah. Um, and she's worked a lot in property management. So she currently manages like 300 rentals for a solo owner. And
Uh,
it's just her and him and like one or two other handymen. Get it all done.
Wow, those are my life goals. I want to have my own property manager because finding a good property manager is really hard. But when your portfolio is big enough to hire your own person to be your in-house property management company or person, that's awesome. But before I let Nico ask his question, because I know he's got one, I just wanted to highlight kind of your mom's path, I guess is why we started this podcast, because a lot of agents, you did like the investor to then become an agent. But a lot of us, like Nico and I, became agents first because we're like, oh,
Yeah.
freedom, we're going to be our own bosses. And then we realized that's not the case with an agent necessarily. And investing is really the path to it. But a lot of agents don't, they help a lot of investors, they manage properties, but they never realize how it benefits them. So that's why I wanted to ask that question. If your mom had been, one of those agents that realized it and made the change, but it sounds like you were the one that made the change for her. You brought it to the table and kind of got her in the game.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Yeah, I approached her and was like, "Hey, I gotta go do this. Like, I need your help," kind of thing. So she was definitely there for me, and she managed a couple of my rentals for me as well. In Kentucky when I first got rolling. Um, yeah, so she was definitely a big help for me in my journey. And she may not ever take credit for that, but she's my mom, you know?
Yeah.
She supported me, she believed in me, and she helped me move forward. So I think it's a huge help to have somebody who just believes in you and
Yeah.
knows that you can do it in any kind of entrepreneurial jump that you're trying to make, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
I had visions of the Barbie movie. If you've seen the Barbie movie at the end, have you seen the end of the Barbie movie? And
Yeah.
she's like, Mom, stand still so that the daughters can look back and see how far they've come. That's what just popped into my head when you said that about moms kind of like being your biggest cheerleader and pushing you forward to do better. Okay, I'm done.
Oh, Emily, let's talk a little bit about that first deal. So one of the things that hold a lot of first time investors is, the analysis paralysis, scared to the 0 to 1, scared to take that leap. And I know you mentioned you had your mom to kind of leverage in that market in Kentucky, but what did that actually look like? Did you just buy a turnkey rental, or did you buy a fix and flip, or how did that look?
We were, I would say I was very green at the time, for sure, had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have like a buy box necessarily. Like I had like a little bit of one, but it wasn't as firm as like my buy box is now, like, 7, 8 years down the road, but maybe that's the case for everybody. It was very loosey goosey. It was like, if I can make the numbers work, like it's gonna happen, and I had a construction background, so I really wasn't intimidated by a lot of work. I was a little bit nervous to do things from a distance. And we were, even with my mom there, she was working full time for her own, property management person. And she also had her own life. So I knew she couldn't like oversee a big construction job for me. So I wanted something that ideally needed cosmetic work only. Um, and we pursued a couple of those and ran numbers on them. And I wasn't, at the time, they would have looked great today. But at the time, I was like, I have to get 10% cash on cash return, like bare bones. Like that is what I'm going to do. Um, Even if it's turnkey or whatever. So I just kind of had that as like my basic metric to get into anything essentially. But I ended up buying something that didn't need any work at the time. It was newer construction. It was not new, but I think it was built in 1995. I've since sold it. I sold it last year, but it was a duplex, townhouse style duplex in like a town style community that was built in the 90s. And it essentially the whole area was pretty much rented to Section 8 housing voucher tenants. So it came with tenants that had been there. One had been there for like 5 years and the other had been there for almost a decade. I inherited those tenants and they stayed there during the entire time I owned it. So it was a very like base hit, easygoing situation. My mom managed it for me for $800 a year. So, she hung out with the tenants every once in a while and, like, checked in on them, gave them their furnace filters every 2 months, and, like, gave it as had that as an opportunity to, like, say hello, make a connection, show them that we're real people
Yeah.
that care about them, and it was a really good experience. The reason we ended up selling that one was because more brand new housing was getting built adjacent that was gonna be rented for similar pricing from what we were understood, and, one of my tenants, which is, like, one of the best feel-good moments, like, was able to get out of Section 8 and buy his own home.
Well,
So we, it was like that is, like, the classic, like, ideal golden scenario for, I think, people who use vouchers, right? They wanna be able to get out on their own eventually, and eventually their job increases enough to where they can get out of the assistance system, which has always been what I understood that tenant's goal to be, and he
yeah.
had children. So he bought a home, but he was the one that had been in for a while, and so the place pretty much needed gutting when he left. Um, so we as far as the cosmetics went, like, it
Yeah.
wasn't in horrible shape, but
It was just needed.
yes, and the kitchen cabinets were original, so everything was just old and it needed switching out. It was cheaper new construction type property, so we redid everything except maybe the tubs. We left the tubs. Everything else pretty much went when he moved out, and we flipped it and sold it after that. So, it was an interesting, like, full circle 5, 6 year project for me, but it was a really base hit at the beginning. I found that the real money was made when we sold it.
Yeah. The appreciation play that was on it. And I also want to point out, I do this with other guests that have said it, like the Section 8 part, a lot of investors shy away from it. They have this preconceived notion of Section 8 tenants. And I feel like it be, I mean, there's always bad tenants, even those that don't get Section 8 vouchers. But
Sure.
I feel like Section 8 vouchers are like, I mean, you get guaranteed funds, and a lot of them are just really grateful to be in a home and they stay a long time.
Yes, they stay a really long time is what I've noticed. And we actually were really strategic about, rent increases. We never quite hit market rent,
Mhm.
especially for Section 8 vouchers. However, we were able to raise between, like, $30 and $40 a year. But the process took, approval time and, time to recalibrate with the system. So it wasn't simple, but we just had a routine and we did it every year and it was fine.
Can I ask why? Now, I want to know why. What was the strategy behind this, the keeping it below market rate? I think this is an important nugget for just in general landlords, but what was the strategy behind doing that?
Well, I knew they'd been in a long time and that I was gonna face, $5, $7,000 worth of renovating whenever they left. So I wanted to keep them below market to keep them in, as long as possible because it kept my CapEx low, and CapEx is the one line item I think that always kills your numbers. As an investor, I think it's pretty much the only thing that's ever really killed my numbers is
Yeah.
I'm great at, like, spreadsheets and paper, but I miss one little CapEx thing, and it's ruined my supposed cash flow for the next 3 years, you know? I mean, all of us, we're all
Yep.
looking in the mirror, aren't we? It's the hardest thing to peg.
Yeah,
No,
turn up.
but that's a good point because a lot of people get greedy. I'll say landlords get greedy and they see dollar signs and they just want to like push it up to market rents as quickly as possible to make more money. And they don't think about the long term effects, which is exactly what you just said.
Well, I wanted to be able to I really wasn't sure if I was how long I was gonna keep that. When I bought it, I thought I'd keep it a lot longer.
Yeah.
But, plans change. Plans
Yep.
change all the time. The economy changes, new construction comes around, and you see, like, writing on the wall at some point, but that one was a base hit for sure, and we made some cash flow on it, It was not as much as we had planned. However, it was there. And, I think I'm just thankful that values stayed strong and we, were able to capitalize on that at the end. But the best part of it was, like, it was so easy. It was an easy first run, and I think that gave me momentum to say, like, "Okay, I can do this," and keep going. I didn't pick to go do, like, a BRRRR and get my money back right away. I didn't pick something really hard and time-consuming. I picked something that was very easy, that mathematically looked like it was gonna work, that I knew I could systemize while working full-time. And for somebody who really need something to work faster for them and maybe they are an agent or they have other, time available, they could do it differently. But, for me, working full time at the time, that was great because then I felt confident and I could move on to my next one. Proof of concept was easy. I was able to move forward with my next one really quickly after that.
So that was your first property, Emily, right? So that was, I'm assuming out of state because you're in Atlanta and
Mhm.
it's like Kentucky. But how does the portfolio, the current portfolio look now? Are you still investing in Kentucky or is it all?
No, I've since been actually downsizing my portfolio a little bit. So I built up in Kentucky through, I guess, for 2 or 3 years is how long I built up there. And then, the pandemic kinda changed the world and everybody's, like, priorities kinda shifted. We were living in California when we were investing in Kentucky, buying sight unseen, mostly doing duplexes, long-term, turnkey or making turnkey before we moved people in was ideal. Um, so we were doing that in Kentucky for 3 years and bought 4 duplexes in a single family home in that time. Um, and then once the pandemic struck, we knew we may be going to move back east to be closer to family, and I had had my daughter 9 months prior to that. So we were kinda itching to figure out a plan to shift east. We weren't really sure how that was gonna pan out, but we knew we were probably gonna go back and live where we had lived before we were in California, which was in Atlanta, which is where we're still at now. My husband and I met in Atlanta, his family's here. His parents were retiring, so, needed some help with the baby.
Mm.
So we said, "Well, we're gonna buy a house hack in Atlanta." So that was the next goal when 2020 kind of hit. Um, it was, I guess, closer to 2021, like, the writing was more on the wall for us there. But we knew in 2021 we were gonna start really figuring out if we could move back east, and we wanted to buy something we knew we could rent out if we couldn't go back, and, also be in if we needed to, but also leave if we got called back to work in California and couldn't stay. So that led us to a duplex again, where we knew if we could live in it, we could live in it if we needed to, but also rent it out if we had to go abruptly. So that's what we found here in Atlanta. We didn't move into it for almost a year. We rented it out to tenants for a while. So we got an investment loan on it at the time, like a 30-year conventional loan. And we put tenants in it and we waited until we could figure out how to move, and then we lived with family waiting for one of the leases to come up. When we moved back here for about 6 months, we lived with family, waiting for a lease to end. Um, and then we moved into it for a year and thought we'd be there 5 years and got really itchy and found another duplex and moved into that one.
That I follow you on social media and I know you're kind of looking for the next one, right? The next house hack, is that
Yeah, we're
okay?
on the hunt again, but we're not in a rush this time. Like, we want it to be our criteria is very narrow now, so it could be another year before we move, but, we're eyes peeled, you know?
Okay. So I want to chat a little bit. We're called the Agent to Investor podcast, and I know you were an investor before you became an agent. Why did you become an agent, and how is it helping you on the investing side?
Yes. So why I became an agent is not currently why I'm using my agency, which is interesting, but I became an agent. I don't know if I've fully explained this to anyone yet, but it's a great question, Nico. My plan with becoming an agent when we lived in California, because the housing prices were so high, was really the goal was to sell like 4 to 5 houses annually there to continue to funnel into my long distance real estate investment business. That was the goal in 2020 when I got my license or pursued getting my license then. So it really was to like sell a few houses, to buy a few houses, to walk away from buying and selling at some point. And then when things started shifting and we moved back east, housing prices in Georgia are much more fluctuant. So that plan has shifted, certainly. And I also fell in love with like really helping people on their journey in real estate purchasing. So I do a little bit more coaching with my real estate agent stuff now too. But the agent stuff now is really more of like my passion project than it is like my bankrolling plan. You know, I would say that I love doing the agent work, but the time I have to do it isn't always there with a younger child right now. But I do have a lot of investor agent connections that I work with here in Atlanta now as well, who I actually partner with to get people where they need to go. So I like to say now I use my license as like I'm the people person. If I can work with them and we're a good fit, that's wonderful. And I'm happy to do that. I work with a lot of long distance real estate investors actually because I do best working Monday through Friday via video calls. So the best people I tend to work with are working from out of state, need something, don't wanna, like, spend their time when there's wanna be with their kids on the weekend just like me, and they're working from I've worked with people in Canada, I've worked with people in California, I've worked with people in New York, I've worked with people, mostly from California, actually, investing here too. But the long distance investors, like, that is how I got started. That is like my bread and butter of knowledge, I think, is the long distance investing. So I work with people and help them navigate how to get that done from where they are, including the whole purchasing process when they work with me here in Atlanta. So that's what I use it for now. And I keep it somewhat under under a certain schedule, that way. Um, so it's different than where I started for sure with the agent work. And I also use it for myself. Like now that I've had a few properties, I obviously use it to buy my own properties, but I use the license to sell my own properties now as well. And I'm with a broker who really supports people investing as well, and they support me in like my own transactions really well as well. So that's kind of where the agent work has led me is more of like this passion project stuff that I really didn't expect to seek and dabble in as much as I am. I thought, oh, it's just going to churn me some quick money and get me where I want to be. Um, but now it's really like I wanna fit people with an agent that is exactly right for them, and sometimes that's not me,
Yeah.
and that's okay. I know what I'm good at, and I know who I can work with well now, and it's okay for me to just refer people to and do, referrals, and I coach people now as well and work with them one-on-one in the coaching, but with a referral agent, even sometimes locally, that's how it works. And I have a great team of agents here that I work with here in Atlanta that are all wonderful investor friendly agents. So it's great to have a community of investor friendly agents to help people as well.
That's awesome. So, because I think most agents are just hustling to make the money and to realize that and helping is kind of second tier because they need the money, but to have been able to flip it. So, I'm curious, and it's a little off topic because that's what I do. How did you grow this, and I'll say client network of yours out of state? Because I'm sure there's some agents that want to get into helping real estate investors, not just becoming investors. how did you get your name out there? How did you grow this clientele list that you now have? Like, how did you start that?
It really started from the industry I was in before.
Okay.
I was very engaged in extracurriculars and volunteer work in the world I was in before. So I, had 1,000 plus connections on LinkedIn and kind of realized like my biggest network of people is my professional network. And those are also the people I've worked with and who know me, know my work
Mhm.
ethic, and they trust me. So then when I started into a new career path in a whole nother industry, they can see the industry I'm in now and they already know and trust me. And a lot of it really does come down to um, just the people I've already known.
Mhm.
And it just becomes like, I don't know, this little karma thing. Like if I can't help them, I'm pretty honest about it.
Mhm.
And if I think someone's a better fit for them, I'm also pretty honest about it. So they know that they're going to get to where they need to be if they can talk to me about it. I'm not going to just try to get their business and make a sale. It's not really it's just not where I'm at right now. Frankly, because my time is so limited, I don't have time. So, I can't sometimes help them is the thing because it wouldn't be fair, you know?
Yeah.
So part of the reason I left the other industry I was in because it was too time consuming
Mhm.
and it wasn't something I could maintain, with a family and with my husband also being in the industry he's in. So my husband also is very, very deep in the industry he's in and he's been in this industry now 15 years, and there's just a lot of people that we knew out there that frankly have money to spend and don't know where to put it sometimes. Or they're grasping at straws at how to maximize it. And
Yep.
we can be a resource for some of those thoughts and ideas and give them at least some general basic knowledge of what we're doing.
Is there?
I think sharing on social media has been another big one as well for the client base. I don't have a massive social media following, but the people who follow me are really invested in what I'm doing. I think that says a lot more than having a lot of followers sometimes too.
Mhm.
Yeah. I love that. 'Cause basically, you're saying, like, I mean, there is a trust deficit, and you're just brutally honest. But like, basically, go to your circle, go to previous industry. They know, like, and trust you already. So capitalize on the circle that you already have around you.
Yes, and it's industry adjacent, I think some of the people I know, but a lot of the people just need guidance and need somebody they trust to tell them how to buy houses. Like,
Yeah.
buying houses is expensive and it's risky if you don't understand it, if you're doing it for investment purpose, right?
Yeah.
So I think they're just looking for quick knowledge, and sometimes an hour with me is a lot more efficient because they can blow through all their questions really quickly than it is, um, reading a book for 3 days about it
Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
quite finding what they need yet, you know?
Yeah. This is
So it's really the trust factor and staying in touch with people too. I mean,
Mhm.
I think a lot of agents really focus on like these 20 touch points you're supposed to do and wish them a happy birthday and send them an email and all these things, like send them your weekly, monthly, you know, the touch points
Mhm.
all the time, all the KW agents, the touch points.
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. But there's a way to make it really natural, I
Yeah.
think. And keeping up with the agents that I worked with in California too has been really beneficial as well.
Oh,
Especially to connect people there, even buying there with those agents too.
yeah. So then you
Uh,
get a referral fee. So this is a perfect example of how learning about real estate investing and or becoming a real estate investor will help you become a better agent.
Absolutely, it will. Yeah, it will. And in the background, I think in construction and how things are built has also helped people trust that I understand what they're buying. And when I do my home tours virtually for investors, I'm not talking about like cool things in the house. I'm like, ooh, this floor's kind of sloped. Ooh, look
Mhm.
at baseboards. Oh, these finish quality doesn't match the neighborhood. It's either above or below. Like
Yeah.
these are the kind of things I'm like pointing out, walking. through the house with them. I'm taking a picture of every single label on every single water heater and every single furnace and every single, I'm looking at the how many meters are outside and are they in good shape and all these things that it's like a mini inspection walk when you walk
Okay.
with me, and people really appreciate that too.
Yeah, I tend to do the same thing. I was working with some clients and I'm looking at it as an investor, which, can be a good thing, could be a bad thing, but I'm showing them, hey, as a first time home buyer that has a walkout basement, hey, maybe you house hack where, they probably don't even know about that term, but, maybe renting out the basement and helping offset. So I agree. I do that all the time with my clients. Anytime I'm walking a property, I'm always thinking of it as an investment. But I guess one of my questions for you, because you are an agent, and I'm just curious to why you think so little agents invest in real estate. I forget the statistic off of my top of my head, but it's not a big percentage of agents that actually are buying properties, and I'm just curious to why you think that is.
Ooh, this is a tough question, Nico, because I don't understand.
That's fair, right?
Um, I really think, there's so many agents out there.
Mhm.
Getting a real estate license, you need a high school diploma and like 8 weeks of classes. And I really do think there are agents out there who like hit those baseline check marks to get through the day. And I mean, we can compare it with like how many agents are agents that actually do a transaction in a year. Isn't it like 70% of agents don't even transact annually?
Yeah. I think
So
last year was even worse.
that, yeah, I'm like, let's talk about that statistic.
Yeah.
Everybody knows a real estate agent, right?
Mhm.
I think a lot of agents probably want to invest in real estate, but the hustle of agent work really, frankly, gets in the way of that.
Mhm.
It really does. Being an agent is a hustle.
Mhm.
You can have your systems in place and get you a team and do all these things, but man, just doing the agent work is it's a full-time job, y'all. Like
Mm.
it really is. And
Yeah.
you can overwork yourself in this world so easily. And, you can do so much work for no pay. Um, yeah, you really got to pick and choose who you work with as an agent too, in order to be productive.
Mhm.
And some of that really is hard when you're getting started as an agent, I think too. Understanding like you should have enough self-respect to tell somebody no if they're not serious enough.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's hard, I guess, in the beginning. You're saying yes to everybody. So it's an art form being able to say no, or like Emily said, maybe delegating it to somebody who's a better fit. So I think that comes with a little bit of time, as newer agents. I don't want to speak for you guys, but I was just saying yes to everything and then running around and driving. And like you said, you don't get paid until the transaction gets closed. And you learn a lot throughout those first couple of years. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah, I wish, I think a lot of agents really want to invest more, but there's a barrier, which is that income stream. And I don't know, we had a really good conversation in our retreat, I think at some point, and maybe I can't remember if it was like in the bigger group or if it was in some one-on-ones, but I think it was in the bigger group saying like that the income, sometimes it's easier to get your daily income or like your active income higher than it is your passive income.
Mhm.
Um, So sometimes that really does need to be people's focus first. Um, I know everybody says they need to invest as soon as possible, but if your monthly income isn't at a point in which like you could handle a flooded basement or a damaged roof, like I'm of the mindset of like you may not be ready to invest yet.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
because the unexpected can happen, and as a landlord, you're legally obligated to get some big ticket items done promptly, depending on what's going on. And I'm probably more risk averse than most. Despite being where I'm at and us investing as much as we have, I would say we've done it in a way that we have felt is pretty risk averse.
Okay. I will say, I think another deficit for agents, this is my 2 cents, is education and community. Because as someone that became an agent first, I didn't know about real estate investing. They didn't teach us that. I didn't have someone around me, or my background wasn't in something real estate related. So you hear about investing, but they're just, if you're an agent that's just surrounded by other agents that are just hustling every day, you don't think about it. You don't know about it. You don't even know where to start because you don't get educated. Real estate classes or school where you get your license, I don't even think they talk about real estate investing. If I remember it all, I don't even think that's a topic on the test.
Oh yeah, I don't know that it is. And yeah,
Awesome.
the general concepts of it are, largely self-taught for agents. Well, I mean, everyone else too, but that's why we've got all these YouTubers and all these podcasters like us sitting here doing this because it really is like word of mouth getting this information around, I feel like. I mean, there are books and there are things, but you really have to be self-motivated to get this information.
Yeah.
I'll say the brokerage I'm at now, I have never met more agents in a brokerage who invest in real estate. It is very cool to be at this brokerage I'm at. It's taken me a while to find one I've really wanted to be at for a long time. And
Yeah.
it's really cool to see the agents in this broker. It's about 200 to 250 agents in this brokerage. It's not huge. It's also not tiny. But I would say, I don't know. I want to say at least 25% of them have an investment or work heavily with investors and understand the concepts. So I would say that's pretty great. So, there are niche little pockets of agents I think you can find. But yeah, I mean, I think people, even a regular person, can struggle to find a truly investor friendly agent as well. And unless agents have done, I don't know, lots of transactions for investors, I would say if they don't have investment experience, they're not going to have as much perspective um, being outside of the trenches of it.
Yeah.
There's so much you learn just in the weeds of it all.
Yeah.
100%. So, Em, thanks so much for sharing, about your background and how you're working as an agent. I wanted to kind of shift gears about, your current house hack, because that's one of the main reasons why we wanted you to come on, because you're doing something really cool. And I know we talked about it on the retreat. But for those who don't know what a house hack is, do you mind explaining what a house hack is and what you're currently doing in Atlanta?
Sure. Yeah. A house hack is essentially utilizing a property to generate some sort of income for yourself by renting out some portion of it. There's lots of different ways to accomplish house hacking. I've accomplished it by buying small multifamilies, usually duplexes, and living in one side and renting out the other to supplement the mortgage payment. I've never lived for free in a house hack, but some people's goal is to live for free in a house hack. I've sold house hacks to people like living in California who wouldn't otherwise be able to own a home, and they buy, let's say, a 3, 4 bedroom house. They rent out 3 out of 4 bedrooms and they live there legitimately for free aside from their down payment. And they did like a 5% down payment conventional loan at the 3, 4% interest rates that were back 5 years ago. So they were doing pretty great. But yeah, you can rent out rooms. You're just renting out some portion of it. Maybe there's an ADU in the back, like an accessory dwelling unit or a garage apartment. Some way that you can generate and rent it out via long-term rental, short-term rental, midterm rental.
Yeah.
You have a unique way that you're doing it, right? So you're in Atlanta, and we talked about this again at the retreat, because you're doing two different kind of house hacks. So with the midterm rental and short-term rental and kind of managing your schedule. You mind talking about that and, how you're kind of doing a hybrid of both?
Yeah, so I am, doing a furnished midterm rental, short-term rental hybrid right now, like you said. I kind of fell into doing it that way. It wasn't exactly my plan. I really was just planning short-term rent it. However, I didn't really know how many people wanted to stay in this area for more extensive time frame reasons in a furnished apartment. I really bought this duplex. I live in a duplex now, and I live in lopsided duplexes. I call them lopsided because the side I live in is usually quite a bit bigger than the other side. But this particular one has a one-bedroom apartment in it that is, um, it came partially furnished. It was this whole house was a short-term rental when I bought it. And the laws were in the midst of changing, and I think the owner panic sold it. Um, and so I got partial furnished on this side, fully furnished on the other side. Took all the nice furniture and put it in the other side, like cherry picked because they had some less nice stuff over there. And I thought, well, I'll just short term rent it for a while and see what happens. But our worst case scenario calculation for this house was we'll long term rent it if we have to for, this baseline amount and just get enough discount to where we feel like we can comfortably live here.
Okay.
So that was really the only goal we had moving into this property. But what I found was when I started listing out on Airbnb, I was getting requests for like 90-day stays some of the time. So I started thinking about how I could really capitalize on that. And I ended up working on a calendar schedule that would essentially allow me to have that done more often than not. And what I also got onto Furnish Finder eventually and thought, well, maybe I'll get some nursing people in. And turns out at the time, the film industry was really busy here. It was pre all of the picketing and all of the stuff
Strikes.
going on that happened like a year or two ago. So at the time on Furnish Finder, I was actually getting inquiries from people working in the film industry primarily. And I was realizing that we were like a touch above the price point that we really needed to be at for the people in film, but or for the people in nursing, but we were still getting requests from the people in film. So what I ended up doing was talking to some other agents actually who were more familiar with the film industry than me and getting in touch with somebody who exclusively rents to people in film and sits on the film sites. And as the contracts get awarded, they would allow people to coordinate housing for them. So I was getting inquiry. I was getting connected with people like that after I figured out this film industry piece of it at that time. And also able to, I was still getting a lot of inquiries on Airbnb primarily. So I just did a 60-day minimum on the Airbnb calendar unless it was less than 30 days out from a booking. So I ended up like staggering the calendar a little bit. So anything past 30 days, it would have to be a 60-day rental. And I realized also that the Airbnb calendar price point, the average Airbnb price point was more than double what people were renting to people in the nursing industry. So people in the nursing industry are pretty much renting one bedrooms between like $1,500 and $1,800 a month max. People in Airbnb are renting around $3,000.
Cool.
So I decided I was going to be the in-between.
Mhm.
I'm going to rent for about $2,600. So I'm cheaper than every Airbnb in my neighborhood pretty much, but I'm also nicer than them. Or not all of them. I'm nicer than some of them. I'm nicer than the ones that are cheaper than me. A lot nicer.
That's where design comes in, right, Emily? Where you got a good eye for furniture and your experience on that. That's probably
Yeah.
it's pop, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So I can make it nice enough. I can accessorize pretty easily on a decent budget. But I from evaluating like, oh, nurses are renting in this amount. And I know that the film industry they're pretty much going to these people on their little film sites where they're looking at Airbnb as their baseline. They don't know about Furnish Finder. Not all of them. So, I mean, anyone who's going anywhere for a longer stay, I feel like they just default to Airbnb because the platform is really easy to navigate. And it's really easy everyone's just familiar with it now. So we decided to be that in-between price and we are like one of the most affordable Airbnbs in the neighborhood, in our price point, like the one bedroom niche here. And I think we had like 3 weeks of vacancy last year.
Wow.
So it was pretty good. Pretty good.
Man, that's
Okay.
like 90. I can't do math, but that's like 90 something percent like occupancy. That's like unheard of.
Yeah, so my goal is to stay occupied, you know, and really the margin for me staying occupied is like $5, $10 a night in this market. So a lot of the success I think that I fell into was just hyper evaluating like what are people paying, what's booked, what's not booked, and like is there an in between? Is there a niche in the in between? And I think what I've done is just found the in between. And I also have that ability as a house hacker to legally short term rent my space.
Okay.
So I can fill those gaps. Like if I get a 90-day booking and there's 2 weeks in between, well, those 2 weeks don't stay empty. I just
Yeah.
make the 2 weeks like with a 5 night minimum and jump it down $5 to $10 a night and it gets booked. So it's very interesting how you can just like play the numbers game. You just have to tighten it up, I think, a little bit. But
So I know a lot of people have the hesitancy about house hacking because you're essentially renting out a portion of your house, but I know yours is a duplex. Have you experienced any tenants on the midterm route or the short term route, or do you do like good quality vetting for trying to get quality tenants?
yeah, we've had like one or two things happen in what almost 2.5 years here. I've had more problems in my short-term rental up in the North Georgia mountains, to be honest. That's like a weekend stay type place.
Mhm.
But here, I don't have people stay less than a week almost ever. I would almost rather be empty than deal with like a shorter group. And I find that people staying for a long time really are busy, you know, like they aren't sitting around in the house. They're not here for vacation. They're not here for leisure. They're here for a purpose, and they're usually not at home. So the units usually stay in really good shape because of that. I've had one person bring in like an ESA dog who peed on all over a rug. Um, but that's pretty much the extent of like our horrible times. I've had
Okay.
someone else get like hair dye stain all over the tub, and we had to like figure out how to clean it. But that's like pretty good considering like things could be a lot worse, you know. I've heard lots of worse horror stories. So I would say like another thing we do is like we fully disclose very prominently that we live in the unit next door, and that we have a child next door as well, and that they may hear some running around upstairs. We disclose that we are here, and we disclose it in a way that it sounds like, oh, it's going to be really helpful, which it is. Like we are here, and if they
Okay.
need something, they can literally knock on my door and get it done in like the second they ask, essentially, because I
Okay.
work too. And so does my husband. So somebody's always here, you know. But I always disclose that I'm here. So really, that I think eliminates a lot of potential riffraff that could occur, you know,
Mhm.
because they know I'm here. There's not like our front doors are adjacent to each other. Like we're going to see each other. You know, if
Yeah.
you have a dog, I'm going to see it. Like if you have 15 people come in, like I'm going to see it, you know. So there's really not a lot of um, issues that we've had, you know, which is good.
Yeah. I think one bedroom, one bath units are underrated, but they're really, I mean, you don't have whole families moving in for a week. You don't, I mean, maybe a couple, and that's the extent. Um, I'm curious, I'm sure Nico had a different question, but what tool, you talked about pricing and kind of figuring out like on those 30-day increments, like $5, $10, like what tools do you use to figure out the pricing or to do your research for analyzing pricing?
Ooh, it's not gonna be easy. I
Oh,
use your tools. I use my mind. Um, I've
the
used
beautiful mind.
I've used tools in the past, like for my other short-term rentals. I'll tell you. I've used Price Labs before.
Mhm.
I was not very impressed. Like I think I'm just a little OCD. Like I end up like getting so annoyed that things don't get booked in time, and I
Mhm.
just end up finagling it all myself because I want the occupancy. So for me, I am not a good person to ask that question probably, Anna, because it's probably not a great recommendation. I like spent a long time in the weeds to like figure out a good pricing strategy. Probably more than I should have, to be honest with you.
Okay.
However,
So you analyze data is what I hear you saying. You look
Or
at Airbnb listings and analyze data.
yeah, and I used back in the day when AirDNA was like a better free resource, I used it more. However, now that Airbnb has the direct comparisons, like when you click on a group of dates in the calendar, you can see like your competitors on the map. If they're you can say booked, you can check them, you can check the ones that aren't booked. I just look at the ones I select the dates that are empty on my calendar. When I get my long-term bookings, I select the gap. I see who's booked. I see who's not booked. How much for the ones getting booked? How much the ones that aren't booked yet? Well, I'm going to be $10 below the ones that aren't booked yet. And I'm going to kind of compare it to the ones that already got booked. And I'm going to get booked, y'all. Like, I just,
I mean, that's a nugget right there. I didn't realize. I mean, I think I've done comparisons, but like I didn't even think about going in for that empty gap and doing the comparison and checking booked versus unbooked. So you just gave a very valuable nugget right there.
but like, you have to manually do it and like spend time on it, which like Price Labs, I mean, Price Labs just isn't going to do it. They're going to use their algorithm, of course, but Price Labs' goal is to get you the most money.
Yeah.
My goal is to have the least vacancy.
Yep.
It doesn't really matter if it's more money to me. I don't care if it's $10 more. I'm not going to wait for it to get, I just don't want to worry about it. I don't want to have sleepless nights over it. I just want it to be booked as far out as possible, you know?
Yeah.
And if it's the difference between $5 and $10 a night that's keeping me from doing that, I'm gonna let that go and like spend my time elsewhere, you know?
Uh-huh.
So I do my quick burn. I check it like once a week if my gaps aren't getting booked. I look at how many views I've had. If my views start going down in the system, I say, oh, well, it's too expensive. I need to go down $5, $10. It's literally $5 or $10 for me at this one bedroom price point. It's like a minuscule amount of money. You're talking $25 for a 5 nights stay of difference
Yeah.
from getting booked ahead of time or like waiting, you know? What are you gonna do? You know, how
Yeah.
many hours is it gonna take you to manage $25 worth of time to get it booked at that higher price too? Like your time alone,
Uh-huh.
how much is that worth? You know, so I just wanted to get booked.
yeah, we're gonna have to hop on a call because, as you know, I'm doing the midterm house hack route as well. So I'm gonna have to pick your brain about how to use the Airbnb to make sure the vacancy is low and charging the right amount.
Yeah, yeah, and I get private requests now too. Like I keep a really nice little plaque in the room of like, you know, if on your next stay, like I'm gonna send you a text message and I'm gonna add you to my phone so that you're in it. And then I always connect with somebody at the end, during or at the end of their stay via text message, ask them to add me to their phone because a lot of people come here for regular recurring work or things like that. So sometimes we just do direct bookings as well. And I have a 2-page lease agreement. And I, you know, have my little snippets of things I send to them for that. And then they just pay me via Stripe on that.
Okay.
And I charge them the fees appropriately for the short-term stay. If they want to stay short-term off platform, that's fine. I just disclose to them that they're still paying the state and county fees for that, and it doesn't go to me. So we do that as well.
Okay. And we are running a little low on time. So what we wanted to do is ask a few final questions. And then we'll kind of give you your platform or how people can reach out to you. But what would you say is like the best advice you've gotten in your experience with real estate or business in general? And what would you say is the worst advice that you've got?
Ooh, I'm like, I can't pinpoint like a certain like worst advice, but I would say like some bad advice a lot of people take is like, wait for the rates to go down to buy, like all of this stuff. I'm like, they're just waiting, waiting, waiting on the sidelines for like when the right moment to strike is. And
Uh-huh.
I know we say this all the time, and agents know this like so well, but like even as an agent, I feel like sometimes people are just waiting for that right moment. And the right moment is like when you can Like, if you can make the numbers work with the rates as they are, like, go do it, you know?
Yep.
And I think there's so many people that just wait. And so many people have told me, like, you're making a mistake buying right now. And that was like the worst thing someone could tell me. Like, it was not a mistake, y'all. I wish I bought more, you know, at the time.
Hindsight.
So I think people, taking advice, I think, from people who don't understand what you're doing is like probably the worst advice I've ever gotten, like, from anybody, like, telling you what to do who has never done what you do, like, nod, smile, and ignore, you know? Like, that's what I say. Like, let them say their piece, and, like, you don't have to fight with them, but, like, ignore, you
Uh-huh.
know? Like, you know more than them, so don't listen. Um, but best advice, gosh, my husband is such a great support person for me, and he's always just telling me this is, like, the opposite of what you just heard, but it's so cliche, but he's just, like, telling me to go for it, like, trust your gut, trust your instinct. If you feel like it's good, like, and the numbers tell you so, like, and I'm a weeds person, like, the numbers are pretty accurate. Um, he's like, you should do it, you know? Don't question your like, if you're feeling confident, like, you shouldn't question it, like, I don't know. It's so good to have people like that in your corner, and my husband is that person for me, for sure.
That's so fun. And does he get involved at all with the investing route, or is it mainly just you and then he supports?
He would love to be more involved. I mean, he's read some of the books, and he's, like, drank my Kool-Aid and stuff, but he's really busy with I mean, he works a W-2 job, and it is very demanding, so he pretty much stays in the background. Yeah, he's just like, "Go spend our money." Full trust. So I'm really, blessed to have his trust, I think, but I'm also a very, like, meticulous type of person, so I think he knows, like, I wouldn't go, run around throwing $100,000 at an investment property without a full understanding that it was gonna have some level of, low risk tolerance, like I said before, but yeah,
You're
he's
blessed, but you've
not.
proven it. You have a track record. You've proven it just like a private money lender. You have shown that you are capable of doing it. So, I mean, give yourself some
Yeah,
credit.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, he has full trust that I can move forward with what needs to be done, I think. But yeah, he's pretty on the sidelines. I wish he could do more, but one day we're gonna pull him out of there, but not right now.
Of course. So you've been in the business for a little over 7, 8 years, I believe, in terms of real estate. What advice would you give like your younger self about what you know now, in real estate business?
Oh gosh, like just the journey is part of it. Like there's gonna be ups and downs. Um, like the the beginning can feel really intimidating, but I tell a lot of people who are in their first deal and they're kind of in the trenches of it, like, and they just want to like throw their hands up and be like, this is too hard, you know? But I tell people, if you're doing hard things, like you're doing something, and that's more than a lot of people are doing. Like people read about this all day long and never do anything about it. There's so many people in the weeds on the research part of this and like never touch even like reaching out to an investor friendly real estate agent as step
Mhm.
one. They just can't take that step. And that find somebody to be in your corner and encourage you and support you. I think that's how I've been able to confidently move forward is like with people so close to me, like my husband and my mom who like have so much unapologetic faith in like my ability to move forward. Like having those people who believe in you is so important because it does help you believe in yourself and know that you can keep going. And those low points can be so low. I've had such big failures in this industry. I am not perfect. I have made so many mistakes, but the upside is way higher financially than like the downside. So you know, I'm thankful to have had, the experiences I've had so far, even if there's been those low points. But those people in your corner, are really important. And if you don't have them in your direct circle, like, you gotta go find them.
Mhm.
Like, you gotta go meet somebody doing what you're doing so you can figure out how to keep going. And that's part of why I joined the community I met you 2 in, as a nice little wrap up here, is because, like, I have some people in my corner, but I was getting in the trenches deep enough to where, like, people just encouraging me wasn't necessarily enough. Once I was 8 years into it, I needed people who were doing more than me to tell me, like, help me navigate. And, like, that piece of it is so, so valuable to find as well.
Yeah, I agree completely with that statement. It's like the community aspect we talk about a lot. And Brian and I, Brian and I are both in it and we support
Mhm.
each other. But Nico knows we are in a super unsexy part of the investing journey, and having a community of other people to help us, even though he's my biggest cheerleader. Like, there's days where we both need cheering on and we just can't be that support network for each other. And having people like you guys is super helpful.
So helpful. Yes, so appreciative. And I'm so, so glad to be on this chat with you guys and on your episode 40. I'm really excited for both of you all to just keep rolling with this, and can't wait to keep listening.
Yay!
And if somebody were to want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
The best places to find me are on Instagram at emily.in.realestate. My calendar's there too if anyone ever wants to book or ask questions with me there. And then LinkedIn as well would be the other big one. You can just find me as Emily Beatty on there. That's the other good place where I like heavily network with people. So those are
Awesome.
those two spots.
We'll make sure to add those to the show notes. But that's going to do it for another episode of the Agent to Investor podcast. You can reach out to me at N Garcia Official, Nico Garcia on all social platforms. And you can reach out to Anna at
I'm Anna Bialik_realtor on Instagram and Anna Bialik everywhere else. And I guess if you ever want to hang out with us, you guys haven't done it, but I'm totally going to do it. You can join us at Coach Carson's RPM community. There's still, I think, a couple seats
Yeah.
open. And that's Rental Property Mastery. You can email any of us and we can tell you all about it. But it's been amazing. And I'm sending Coach a message about sprints. Like, you're going to be the LinkedIn person, Emily. I can do Instagram for like the social media sprints. And I'm going to vote for MTR management. I know we're doing a management sprint soon on like processes. Are you in it for like MTRs and it's? Are you doing something for it?
I'm not doing anything for it, but I'm
Well,
gonna
I'm going to
attend.
tell them.
I'm gonna attend. I'm attending.
Okay. All right. So there it is. There's the plug for RPM.
Yeah, I'm excited for this sprint.
Awesome.
Yes, it's an awesome community of people, investors, and can highly
Worth it.
recommend. Great people right here.
Yeah, we're coaching. Emily's one of the coaches. So,
She is.
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah, it's
guys,
awesome.
tune in until the next episode. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Yay.
y'all.
Thank you.